Yeah, so it's Mel and Wendy again. Hello everyone, how are you? And we've decided we're going to talk about money because we're just chatting and we went, but this has cropped up and that's cropped up with a client for me, and then
Yeah,
it went on to personal stuff. And I think it's one of those things that people don't like talking about. They don't like talking about how much they earn. That is,
yeah,
that companies do that, don't they? You
yeah.
can't discuss your salary with anybody unless you work in particular kind of organizations. Like I work for a local
So much
authority.
secrecy. You know what? I once picked up a print off in an office of everyone's salaries. And I'm going to be honest, I picked up my printing stuff, and there was this list of people's salaries, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." So I shoved it in the paperwork and took it away to have a look at it, and um, and I never owned that I'd got it. So somebody must have been really anxious, and that's really bad now. But I wasn't in my 20s. And so I took it away to have a look at it, and I realized I was being paid a lot more than a lot of the other people in that office. And I was like, "Oh, I quite like this." But I know that's not normal. We could get into gender pay gaps. That's a whole different
Yeah,
conversation, isn't it? But yeah, we were going to talk about something else today, and then you got to be in your bonnet about something that had happened, and that fed into mine, and we're like, let's just go with what's life, because money. I said to you, money is power, but actually, I don't think it is. I think it's money is actually the lack of money is terrifying.
oh
Yeah.
gosh, yes, absolutely. I've been
And
there.
so
I've been there.
when we're having conversations about money, we're actually having conversations about safety.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
can be, I think it can switch from one side to the other, because if
yeah,
one person in a relationship is controlling the money, and I've had clients where he would give her an allowance,
yeah.
and so he was controlling her, yeah, everything she did because she couldn't spend money unless he gave it to her.
Yeah, and that's like it feels like adult child almost.
Oh,
Yeah.
um, and she felt really upset by it. And it
You
felt
don't
really,
trust me is probably in there somewhere.
yeah, not
Yeah,
being trusted, being controlled, feeling lesser in the
yeah.
relationship, um, all of that. But yeah,
I
it's
had a similar I had a client who controls the money in the relationship, and actually it's a female that's controlling the males. But actually this is rooted in a traumatic and I'm like, why are you controlling the money situation? And actually this is because I don't trust you implicitly, because you've gambled a lot of our money away. So, what's happened in that has led to me either um, trying to control the money situation. I just want to put something out there at my own personal experience, because it pisses me off. This is going on the adult channel, not the child's channel, because I'm not going to stop swearing. Um, uh, People say that money's not important. Yeah. Now, anybody who says money is not important is probably in a middle class bubble that's got enough money to pay the bills, buy food, and we know we're in an economic downturn, so it's probably becoming more important to more people. But money is resources, money is safety. I've been in a situation where I've not been able to afford the rent. I've been homeless. I've not had a pound to my name. I've not been able to buy food. So money buys you resources. It buys you. It can mean that the difference between waiting 6 months for a physiotherapist or being able to go and pay for a physiotherapist. It can mean the difference between heating your home. So when we go, money isn't important. Beyond a certain limit, it may not be important because I have enough, and maybe I have surplus. Yeah, but it's damn important when you can't meet your basic needs.
gosh, yeah,
Yeah,
I've been there.
yeah.
I was there when I was first divorced from my first husband, and it was just me, and I had two young teenage girls, and I didn't have a job. I had a house, but I had no money.
So vulnerable place to be.
Yeah, and I was trying to get a job, but it was because we had to move house and also to a different area. There was a lot, so it really was. I can remember I used to buy. I'm a vegetarian, but I used to buy a pound of mince and a pound of sausages every week, and I had to, and maybe if we're really lucky, I might buy a chicken at the weekend.
Yeah.
And then I made that stretch for the whole week. Yes, and there were
Tough
times when
times.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't eat the mince, I would eat maybe the sausage,
Yeah.
but it needs must. But we couldn't turn the heating on. They had to go under blankets. There was so much that my girls, they were really good actually. They didn't make a huge fuss about stuff,
Yeah.
but it really was watching every single penny
Yeah.
here. And my parents helped me out at that point, but it was really, really frightening.
Yeah.
And I know that from that point on, that made me very anxious about money.
Yeah, it's rooted in anxiety is rooted, isn't it, in too much the uncertainty is intolerable. I love Barry Mason's work. It's unsafe uncertainty. There's safe certainty, I can tolerate this, and then there is unsafe uncertainty. Too much uncertainty, too much unsafety. It's overwhelming and it creates health issues. We could do a whole series on anxiety, couldn't we? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think money also, I had a really juicy thought, and it's just kind of as I was kind of trying to slow my brain to keep listening to you, it's gone out my head. But I was just thinking about how yeah, the power balance between money. I was just thinking I had a client who was multimillionaire, and she was dating somebody who had a was an electrician, yeah, and he didn't earn a lot of money. He was self-employed, and so actually, it she said it didn't matter. Yeah, in the beginning, it didn't matter. Yeah,
yeah,
but actually, I like I like this person. The money is not an issue. Yeah, but actually, over a period of time, resentment started to build because she's like, well, every birthday present I'm buying myself. Yeah, it's coming out my bank account. She started to feel used, taken for granted, and so actually this money and power thing, it started to play out. And as she couldn't name it, it got worse. Yeah. And so I think sometimes, when there's a real mismatch and we can't talk about it, we can't name it. Yeah. Then actually and it's not always rooted, sometimes it's not rooted so much in safety but in respect. um I'm thinking, when people share homes, whether it's housemates, I've got a housemate, whether it's kind of your partner, if I feel that I am pulling more weight than you financially, then actually it starts to become about respect. It's like it goes back into, it hits those buttons we talked about in the first episode. Is this about power? Is this about appreciation, validation, or is this about intimacy and closeness? And it hits the two top buttons. It's power, yeah, power and control, but it's also appreciation and validation. Yeah, that actually you're spending my stuff, and either you can't contribute enough. Yeah, yeah,
and then the other side is withholding, because if you've got
yeah,
power over money and
yeah,
you're withholding money from me, then
yeah,
that sense of that vulnerability, and again the resentment comes up from there, just from that
yeah,
side too.
yeah,
So it's not just the person who's contributing more, but it's the one who is feeling powerless.
yeah,
And I think, well, I'm going to cite this recent case where clients where he he felt had this need to have a lot, keep control of money. Money was frightening for him. He had the anxiety around money,
yeah,
and that we looked about that. We look at the root of it, because I always think, what's the root of your relationship with money? And
yeah,
he had experienced difficult times. He had been made redundant. He had all those reasons why he would feel anxious about money,
yeah,
but um, she wasn't so anxious about it. Um, but she felt resentful because he kept complaining there, where are you spending the money? Where are you spending the money? But not actually having a conversation and really saying, can we sit down and talk about this? Because I feel that I don't understand it, but can we just have a proper conversation? He was complaining, well, all these part packages keep turning up. I don't know what's in them. And I said, well, I wonder what stopped you from looking.
yeah,
What stopped you from opening the packages or asking? What stopped you from checking out the Amazon account.
Yeah, I'm guessing the story is made up. Is she's spending too much money. She doesn't care. I'm earning it. Something like that. My what about me has kind
Yeah,
of completely taken over here. I'm
yeah.
thinking about value systems as well. Oh, sorry, go on.
Okay, so I'm just going to add in that she felt she wasn't trusted.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't trust me. I'm looking after all the household stuff, but the food, I buy all the food,
yeah. I'm
all
feeling
the
the need to
household
defend
expenses.
myself because I'm
Yeah,
not
and yet
respected and
you're,
trusted here.
yeah, and you don't believe me.
Yeah, it's so
So
hard and hurtful to not be believed and not trusted.
yeah,
Yeah. After all these years we've been together, you don't trust me. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Could
So
play each other's clients, couldn't we, quite easily sometimes, I think. Yeah. I'm wondering, I'm thinking about value systems as well,
yeah,
what we spend our money on, yeah, and what we
yes,
value. So I get couples and actually in my own relationships, like, I don't how materialistic we are, how we value success. Um, I remember having a client come to see me who was very wealthy, and he said to me, "You can't be very successful." Yeah, you can't be very successful. So his money bought him power and arrogance. Yeah. And it was all grounded in insecurity. Yeah. Tried to negotiate a big discount and I was like, I don't do discounts. Yeah. Not particularly when you've already told me you're very wealthy. Yeah. And so yeah, there was definitely a power play playing out here. But actually we valued our success very differently. His was like accumulating wealth. Yeah. Um, in like big cars, big house, yeah, rooted in perfectionism, yeah.
absolutely.
Um, and
Yeah,
actually, I said to him, I don't know, I don't have a big house. But actually, I've been to 44 different countries and counting. I lost count at 44. I've lived experiences of traveling. Yeah, I've fed baby elephants. I've seen orangutans in their natural setting. I've done all this stuff that to me is life enriching,
yeah.
but for someone else. And so couples get into arguments over he wants to buy. I'm being very gender typical here. She wants to buy curtains and she wants a nice home. He might want a car or she might want an expensive car and somebody else is saying actually no. So do you know, I don't know why he needs a bigger house. Yeah. I don't know why we can't spend some of this money or why we're squirreling it away. And actually you can get chaotic and rigid patterns around money. So somebody who really struggles to spend it and like lives in kind of survival mode of kind of locking it down, and then you can get chaotic people who can't hold on to it and they're spending and spending because they don't have any breaks. I think those breaks, I wrote about this morning actually, the process of change, how your lower brain hijacks your upper brain, and whether it's food, whether it's drinking, whether it's money, that impulse control, that ability to play a longer game rather than short-term reward, it often translates out into other things. So our value systems can be very different about what we value, what we want to spend money on. Yeah.
Can I add
Yeah,
and it
go
can be
for it.
a person
Your turn.
story, but it always taps, it taps into me. So I was in um, a medium length relationship, but it ended really badly. Okay, and it cost me everything. I mean,
Mm,
financially. I had because I had to drastically downsize. I always call this my Wendy house because it's just a tiny little. It's not an area I choose to live in either, but that was how it left me financially completely wiped out virtually.
yeah.
Um, but what was happening was I knew that by downsizing, there were a lot of things I had to get rid of. And I remember friends standing in my old garden with me as they watched me burn all the treasures, like my 21st birthday cards, um, and really treasures like that because I knew I wouldn't have anywhere to put them. Now,
Mm,
all my furniture, or not all of it, but the stuff I couldn't take with me, what I had to auction it. And there was stuff in there with I'd spent a lot of money on
yeah.
that, and some of it just got given away because nobody wanted to buy at the auctions.
Yeah.
So when I moved here, I had furniture. I'm not materialistic, but if anything else, that taught me it's just stuff.
It
It's
is stuff,
nothing.
but we have you just talking about relationships.
Yeah,
No, what I said in a previous episode, we have relationships and relationships with things. We can have a relationship with something, whether it's sentimental value, like that the chair my grandmother gave me.
yeah, yeah.
I don't
Those
have
things. Yeah,
things that are sentimental because I was a runaway, so I didn't take anything with me. I value relationships more than
yeah.
belongings any day.
And
But
that's
yeah,
me because yes, I live in a little house. A lot of my furniture's been recycled, and I'm happy with that
yeah,
because, like you, rather go and have experiences. But
yeah,
I'm sure there are a lot of people that judge me on where I live and what I've got because they don't know my background.
yeah,
Why should they? But it is that I don't need a posh car. I need a car to get around in. I
yeah,
don't need posh furniture. I don't need all of that. It for me, I'd rather spend the money on experience. But it is interesting how we have that because I went, what's the point anymore? I've got a few treasures, but the rest of it, what's the point? I can't get attached to it because I lost it all.
yeah.
And so I just thought I'd throw
We're
that one
gonna
in.
do it. We're gonna do a session on hidden losses, aren't we, and how they
Yeah,
impact
we
us.
are.
We was talking about this the other night. We're gonna do one on or how the hidden losses play out. I was just thinking about how money and power in the relationships, but in a much wider context in life. Like I'm treated better when I'm dressed well than when I'm in
Oh
my
God,
scruffy
yeah.
clothes. I remember supporting a client many years ago who's a heroin addict in a trackie and hoodie and baseball cap. And she went in to try and open a bank account and he wouldn't open one for her because she didn't have the right ID. And he just dismissed her. And she was so upset. And I was furious. Fucking furious, sweary type furious. But I held it and I went in and I was, come on, this is not on. And so we went in and I asked her to speak to the manager. Yeah, and the manager came out and I said, can we have a word in private? And I said, she'd come to open a bank account. She'd been turned away. She'd been treated appallingly and dismissed. And because she didn't have the two things that money were able to do. One, she didn't have a passport. She'd never been on holiday. And she didn't have a driving license because she didn't drive. So the two main forms of ID weren't accessible to her. She hadn't got to either of those stages in life where she could afford holidays or to learn to drive. And I said to her, are you telling me if you don't drive and you don't have a passport, you can't have a bank account? And I know somebody else who doesn't drive and doesn't have a passport and he has a bank account. So how's he done it? And then she was like, oh, there's loads more forms of ID. So the laziness here in seeing her as just, somebody in a hoodie and a baseball cap and judging her
Judgment.
left her feeling ashamed and not able to open a bank account. We opened that bank account that day, and that um, uh, bank manager, I said, you need to check how you're discriminating against this person because they're because of how they're dressed. Yeah,
Yeah,
the assumptions you've
yeah.
made.
Assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, same as homeless people can't get a bank account because they've got no address.
No, my friend Sean's homeless, and I often sit with him and have lunch with him on the floor, and you can see people looking, going, I don't understand what's going on here. Yeah, yeah.
It
What?
is if you,
Yeah.
money is a drive instead of. I mean, money. If initially we used to have a barter system, so you would barter, I don't know, a pig for a cow, for example.
Mm.
But then because the cow was worth more, it was bigger than the pig. You had to have something that would make up the difference. And so that's how money was invented, wasn't it? We have
Well, if you
tokens.
think if we go, I'm just thinking about relationships, bringing that back to relationships, and actually, if we look years ago, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen, women were found husbands based on their social standing and how much money they had. It wasn't
Exactly.
we didn't marry for love, we married for money and
Yeah,
status.
exactly.
And
Stage
over the
yourself.
years, Esther Perel's work, Esther pointed this out to me. So, it's all stolen. A lot of this stuff is stolen. It's not originally
No,
ours.
that's right.
Um, but over the years, we've married more for love. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's
yeah,
modern day, but it is just that it's a modern day thing, romantic love.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
cheap.
and we said married. Yeah, so talking about those value systems and how they if there's a disconnect here, we lost a Zoom and it's back
Yeah,
up. Those value systems. I was also thinking because I just mentioned marriage and I was just thinking when you're not married, that the kind of the lack of safety in terms of, if we build this home together, what happens if it doesn't work out? And I remember somebody saying a long time ago when I talked about, the equality of like having your own bank account and your own finances, and somebody saying, yeah, but if you're married then it means you don't trust each other. I'm like, no, it just means I've been divorced, and actually I have a realistic outlook on, what might happen here. And so and somebody's just mentioned to me recently who his is dating says, no, I own my own house. And I is it wrong that I'm concerned about if I meet someone else, what happens and how do I protect what I've worked all my life for? And I said, I don't think it's wrong to think about your safety. I don't think it's money grabbing at all. It's, and maybe that's a sensible conversation. A friend of mine who's on a kind of another marriage, actually, they had those conversations when they got together because she didn't want to be vulnerable, and she also was aware of having more assets and wanting to protect those assets for her own children because he didn't have any. And so they're, what we want to do with our money, why we're together, what we want to do with our money if it doesn't work out, and also what do we want to leave to our kind of dependence if we have any. And so yeah, there's so much rooted in money in relationships, in the beginning of relationships, in the middle of relationships, and when they're ended, and also relationships, also when life is ended. I'm just thinking that, when there's no life insurance and somebody dies, or somebody leaves and we're left high and dry, or in kind of breakup. So there's so much kind of vulnerabilities around money, whether you have it or you don't. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's interesting when you have that balance of power or whatever. One person looks after all the finances, but then, as you say, what happened? And the other person will go, okay, I'm okay with that. You deal with it all. But if the person is taking care of all the money, if they get sick or die, which is the worst possible, that leaves the other one not knowing what the hell to do.
Yeah.
And so, although I think it's really one person might be much better with money, or they're more money minded, or they're and it's a natural kind of attribute or something.
Yeah, some
Then
people are just really disinterested because
yeah,
actually there's been enough, or someone else takes care of it. So I might have no, and I know somebody else who's going through divorce who says, I did not know what financial situation we were in.
mm,
They weren't interested.
no, but I
Yeah.
think it is important to be interested.
I
I
think it's
think
so important that both partners know what's
absolutely
going on with their finances. I also think when I'm
how
working with
to access
clients, I
how to
always say,
access a
ah,
bank account.
yeah,
How do I get into the bank account? What bank accounts have we got? People don't even know that simple stuff. And I think
absolutely.
And I think
Yeah.
this is it. So I urge people, get when you get together, have those difficult conversations. All right, they do feel difficult, but but it leads to so much more difficulties later on down the line.
Yeah.
And
There's a whole subject we could do on end of life planning because nobody's going to die. Nobody wants to accept it. Nobody wants to plan for the unimaginable happening. Sadly, we work with often people who are living through their unimaginable. I'm living through my unimaginable. We all do at some point in our lives, perhaps. You're
I've
bloody
got,
lucky if you get
I've
through
got,
life
I've got,
without.
yeah, I've got a workbook, my end of life planning, but workbook,
Yeah.
so we can talk about that another time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah, and I'm interested, and it's interesting when we started this conversation about money, it was very much about just fighting about, who spends on what. But I'm aware how big it is.
Yes.
Yeah, how
It's
big.
huge. It's a huge
Yeah,
subject.
huge,
And yet it just
huge.
doesn't get talked about.
No,
Say, it starts with the company you work for, that you mustn't talk. I mean, I've been told in the past, you don't discuss your salary.
yeah.
But even with no, my daughter and I can talk about money. We're quite open about it. But families don't talk about money. You never talk about what you're earning. Or,
Do you know what? I think they talk about money, Wendy, but they don't talk about it. And let me explain a little bit about
okay.
that. There's a saying that by the time you're 10, you'll have an attitude towards money. You'll
Yes.
know in your home you'll know in your home whether there is an abundance or a shortfall, not by the fact that the bank account is ever disclosed, but by the behaviors that happen in that home. Whether you're fed bread and jam, whether somebody has kind of like shortcutted somewhere because there's not enough, or whether there's a abundance of it. It's often scarcity more than abundance, but our attitudes we know growing up actually, and sometimes children know that there's not enough money and they know not to ask for things because mom's not got enough money, and other times there's a complete lack of awareness and why can't I have this and why can't I have that. I think I also want to talk about shame, the poverty, shame, poverty, because actually, as somebody who grew up I grew up in a home where there wasn't a lot of money, but then as I was homeless and I didn't have a lot of money, the shame around that, when people would invite me out for dinner, I would kind of like, I'd lie and say I wasn't hungry and I'd order the starter because I couldn't afford, and I wasn't drinking because I couldn't afford the three courses and I couldn't afford the wine that they were drinking. Um, and so I think we don't talk about the shame around not having
Mm,
enough that we live with when your mom can't afford the shoes that everybody else is wearing. So yeah, whether it's through relationships or whether it's growing up, we may not have talked about money. We may actually not also build the skills with children around money of like, this is your allowance. When it's gone, it's gone. And maybe we just keep handing it over and then we'll get resentful of like, what, you want another pair of trainers? I remember a good friend of mine having a conversation over dinner and him saying, my boys, he was the only earner, and he was saying, I can't keep up. I can't keep up with what they want. And I said to him, well, that's because there's no boundaries.
mm.
His overcompensating as a parent meant that his boys, whatever they asked for, they got, and he would
Yes.
work extra hard to give it to them.
Yes.
Yeah, out of his own deficits in childhood. But what was happening was, they didn't know where their limits were. They just didn't realize that dad didn't have an endless supply. No one does, and that money, not money doesn't grow on trees. That resentment that actually you're asking for more than we've got. And so actually he started to set boundaries and limits and say, this is your part. You
Yeah.
need to know how. And I remember having a conversation with a kid, and she was like, my mom won't buy me the latest mobile phone. And I said, do you know how much they are? And she had no clue. Like they're like £300 or £400. I don't know. Yeah, £400-500, probably more. And I said, do you know how many hours someone has to work? I wonder how many hours your mom has to work to afford that. And then yeah, there's no, you're right, sometimes there's we have a sense of what's going on in the home in terms of deficits, and the stress maybe around money. Maybe the bailiff might have been at the door collect after
Yeah.
rent, these poverty stories of hardship. But actually you're right, we're never taught to manage money. um
No, and another story I could add to that, because at one point I was a housing officer for a local authority. I didn't deal with rents. That was not in my remit, but you could see families who didn't know how to prioritize. So they wouldn't pay their rent, but they'd have a 50-inch television.
mm,
They just didn't understand the concept of money and what was important.
yeah,
Oh, well, they won't throw us out. We won't be homeless, but at least I've got my 50-inch television. So not
Well,
taking the
that's really interesting. What we spend our money on, that we value, that goes more about, the materialistic value system, but actually, the student who doesn't want to buy glasses, or get a dental appointment, but actually will then go and spend a hell of a lot of money on a bingy night out because that's fun. I hate buying petrol. Yeah, I don't get anything for it, but I do get the freedom of moving around and driving my car. But it doesn't come in a shiny bag. And so I don't like spending money on petrol, but I'd much rather spend money on something that I can like getting my hair done. I kind of don't mind that. My hair looks nice and I feel good. So the petrol the spending money on the hair appointment is actually easier for me than to spend on petrol.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting yeah,
What we want. And actually we may have, I think also it's worth talking when we're talking about money, is you may have quite I have quite a schizophrenic relationship with money, one that comes from adversity. Like sometimes I'll park the car over here because it's free and walk into town, so I've saved £4.
yeah,
Yeah. And then other times I'm in abundance mode, or I've got enough mode and I'm tired and I'm like, I'm not getting the bus home because I didn't take the car on this particular day. And actually I'm gonna blow some money on a taxi home because I'm tired and I want the taxi home. So sometimes I'm in abundance and mindset.
yeah,
My
yeah,
bank account has not changed, but my mood between
yeah.
scarcity and abundance is schizophrenic. Sometimes I'm feeling safer and I'm okay and I'm able to spend. And then sometimes I'm feeling unsafe, and I want a squirrel. Yeah.
And I can identify with that too. It's
Yeah.
weird, isn't
It's
it?
not fixed. It kind
No,
of,
I mean,
nothing is
but
fixed.
there
Our
is,
attitudes are fluctuating
yeah,
depending on the context around it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very interesting what we value with our money and what we don't. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
for
what we're
me,
prepared to spend on and seeing investments. It's like, yeah. And actually
I'm going to say
investing.
I will not pay a bank to look after my money. That,
You see, I pay a stocks, and I'm going to own. I've got a little bit invested in stocks and shares, and I pay to have that managed. Yeah, because
I,
they know what they're doing. I
yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So do
But
we value this expert and pay for it? Sometimes it's not around money, So anybody who's selling a service or running a business, sometimes it's not around money. It's that I don't value that service or I don't see a benefit in it,
yeah,
in buying it. Yeah.
yeah. But,
And also we don't talk about addictions when we're talking about relationships and money.
oh,
Am I
yeah,
shopping to fill some need? I've had somebody who said, yeah, I buy things and shove them at the back of the cupboard and I don't tell my partner I've bought them. So
yeah,
there's a secrecy that's fueling a loneliness and an unhappiness. I know when I've been unhappy in the past, I've been looking for the lipstick that's going to make me feel better, or that dress that's going to make me look amazing. And these days I'm more likely, as people know who follow me on LinkedIn, I'm more likely to go, look, I got this for £4 from the charity shop, this dress, because actually I'm buying because I've lost some weight and I need some clothes. I'm not buying just to cheer myself up. I buy more out of a need now than a need to kind of get that dopamine reward. We could do
yeah.
another one on addictions, couldn't we? We're kind
And
of
what, yeah.
hard
But
to contain us into a box. We do not fit into a box.
I mean, and that kind of addiction is around like talk what you spend the money on. I think as you say, we talk about addictions, but gambling. I want
Gambling
to
is so under
accumulate
talked
more
about.
money.
Yeah,
I'm trying to accumulate more money, but I'm actually spending more money than I'm getting back. So what?
yeah.
And you've talked about buying retail therapy, but there's also drugs, alcohol, it's all the stuff that we feel
Cleaning.
people fill their lives with
Yeah. One we
because
never
they're
talk about is
empty.
cleaning.
Yeah.
I worked with a client who, and I just said to her, how often do you clean? And she says, how did you know? 6 days, 6 times a day, hoovering out of complete anxiety and unable to cope and keep still. Yeah. And so, yeah, there are so many coping strategies that fit into relationships that we could talk about. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah,
Power.
going back to, yeah, and money is such a massive topic, power, control. rooted in unsafety and uncertainty and how it hops around. Yeah,
And
yeah.
what, like you said, what we spend money on, you will happily go to a charity shop and buy clothes. Other people will only spend designer things
Well,
because
I
they
wouldn't have
think,
gone in past history. I would never have gone to the charity shop. Um, I would shop on the high street. And so my frame of reference has changed.
yeah,
I had I got in my marriage breaking down. I didn't work for 8 months. Yeah. And so my scarcity buttons were going crazy. Yeah. And
yeah,
also the uncertainty of divorce, carving up a
yeah,
lifetimes of and stuff. So it was kind of that I'd gone back into survival mode that I need to conserve resources, don't spend anything,
yeah,
live really cheaply, but then actually realizing that how much that is creating a an unhappiness because whilst I don't need to have designer I've never been into handbags at all, never mind designer handbag. There was a level of kind of life that like getting my hair and nails done that that was normal to me, and
yeah,
actually realizing that I'd restricted too far in this survival mode, that it was actually I wasn't investing in me in so many ways. I also want to bring in here the investment. Sometimes when you're in survival mode, you don't want to invest. You don't want to invest in therapy. You don't want to invest in anything because you're just too frightened to spend anything. I remember
yeah,
having two contracts cut many years ago by the government. Yeah. And so they were like no therapy in schools, and I lost 90% of my work. And I
yeah,
did not I just wanted to work really hard to try and replace it. And then and sometimes it's working smarter than harder. And thankfully I was introduced to a business coach, and I didn't have the money to spend on him, but I spent it anyway.
mm,
I got funding for half, he found half for me. And so sometimes when we invest, we don't want to invest when we're in crisis, but
no,
sometimes that investment, if it's the right investment, is helpful. And
yeah,
so, yeah, that kind of holding on to in survival mode,
mm,
actually, can we invest in this because it is going to bring in a benefit? So yeah, going back to what we invest in, what we don't, what is useful, what is not.
yeah,
It could have been the other way around if I hadn't got the right person. And I've seen this so many times. If the investment is not, if you haven't done our due diligence, yeah,
mm,
about anything really, from whether it's the mortgage we're kind of getting, or whether it's your business coach. I knew I needed help, and I couldn't afford a
yeah.
business coach, but it's really when you can't afford it, you need it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
pity. It's yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
and
yeah, that kind of yeah.
investment.
Investing when you
Investing is almost a commitment, though, isn't it? If I invest, that means I'm committing myself to doing something, or I'm committing to the relationship, or I'm actually committing to myself.
it is committing, but sometimes it's not commitment that's the problem. Yeah. And I, and
Okay,
I and I say that out of my own, because sometimes we are able to willing to work hard and we are committed, but the work we're doing is the wrong work.
yeah, I suppose where I'm coming from is that if I commit myself to spending money on a coach, on
Yeah.
therapy, or that means that I'm investing in that, but it
I
means
think you're
I'm
right. That's
making a
definitely a
commitment.
stumbling block, that if I commit to it, I've got to do it. And
Yeah.
so for people who aren't very accountable, that's a problem. Yeah.
And if
But
you've
for
got
me, who
scarcity of
is an
money,
overworker, that's
yeah,
not the problem. I'm accountable. I'm an overdoer. I'm an overworker.
yeah,
My business coach gave me my action plan, and it was supposed to last me 2 months, and I did it in 3 weeks. Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm accountable, and but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what work. So the problem sometimes is it's not that we don't want to work, and I don't think people don't work hard. They're not working hard on the right stuff. Their lens is slightly in the wrong place. And don't
and
we
what?
get into
And
like, I
where does
need to
that come
keep
into the money
doing,
bit?
I need to keep, sorry.
Where does that come into the money bit?
I think it's about knowing what your blocks are. Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah.
because our blocks are all different. So you're saying to me, well, if you've got a coach, you've got to do the work, and you're not getting the coach because you don't want to do the work. And my lens is different from yours, because like I'll always do the work, but I really need to know what is the work I've got to do, and am I doing the right work to get me to the right place, or am I wasting my time on something that isn't going to bring me a benefit, isn't efficient? I'm about efficiency, strategy. Is this strategic? Is it efficient? And if it's not, then I don't want to waste my time with it. So
Or your money.
all my money. Yeah. So I think our blocks are very different. When people, like, I had a client recently who said to me, I'm going away for the weekend and I'm going to spend all my time working out who I am. And I said to him, don't do that. Don't do that. You can't do it in a weekend anyway. You don't find yourself, you create yourself. And actually, you adding to your identity is a process. Why don't you just enjoy the weekend? Nurture yourself, enjoy whatever you enjoy if you can. And you have permission to not spend it all in like self-development mode, in an anxiety to fix everything. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
and I
our
guess,
what sometimes the work we think we're doing isn't the work.
yeah, yeah, and I guess that is about investing in the right area. So I guess we will put our money there, or we won't put our money there. I will
Yeah.
kind of bring it back to for the listeners to get why we're talking about that, because we went a little bit off
Yeah, I've gone
beat.
like
I think, hold on,
I
let
respect
me
you for working with me, because yeah, I'm like, well, it must feel a bit like where's she going?
well, yeah, we've got to see where it's relevant, haven't we? Because otherwise we
It
will
is all
drift off.
relevant. It's probably it's off topic for relationship. Not sorry, it's off topic for money, but it kind of it's relevant because where we focus our lens and
Yeah,
what we what we're working on
yeah,
sometimes is not quite what we think, what we should be working on to get the change or progress is sometimes not what we think it is.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
like
just
the
think,
need for more money. Let's bring it back in. I'm going to bring it back
yeah,
in.
but I think
Yeah,
that does relate to
the
money because that's
scarcity or
where
not
you would spend
enough.
your money on, or what you might invest in, because I think it's all relevant. But I just wanted to see that connection for the listeners. I
So
was
many
getting there, but
people,
yeah,
yeah, so many people tell me that I need, Brennan talks about this a lot as well. The scarcity story. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough friends. I don't have enough time. I have enough love. Yeah, and actually, if you don't have enough money and you're still busy trying to earn more, yeah, and I'm not talking about people who are homeless. I'm talking about I've got a story that the if I have more money, I'll be happier. If you can't enjoy what you've got and it's enough and it then actually if you're lonely, yeah, and you think, oh, I have more money, that will help. Actually,
mm.
no, it's not. So if you can't enjoy what you've got, if you
Yeah,
can't settle into what
absolutely.
you've got, more is not necessarily going to help. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm going back to a couple I worked with where he needed to have these savings, but it was at such a cost that they had no money to go and enjoy life
They're not
together.
enjoying the now because we need more
Yeah,
stashing. Yeah.
exactly. So they hadn't been on holiday for 5 years. They weren't going out because they didn't want to spend money, or he didn't want to spend money. It hadn't
Yeah.
go in savings. And that really crippled the relationship because
Yeah.
where's the joy? Where's the fun? Where's the living for now and enjoying it? There wasn't anything. Well, you
It's so
can't spend the money,
interesting. Yeah.
can't
You
spend the
just
money, can't spend the money. And so you're kind of shutting the whole relationship down.
yeah.
And therefore, where's the joy?
The
Where
joy now whilst balancing the need for the future. I remember working with a client, and she came from an Asian family, yeah, and she was like, she wouldn't rent, she wanted to buy. We don't rent, we buy. That was the story. And I said, but you're really unhappy in this environment. Surely, if you're out of this environment, that might help. No, I got to wait till I can buy. And then as we explored their kind of ancestry, we kind of went back to actually her parents had come over here. They'd opened a store. It's a familiar story, and they'd work having had nothing, and
Mm,
migrated to working from the minute they woke up to the minute they went to sleep. And so this really big work culture, yeah, had was still there. And actually, we don't know when we've got enough, and we don't enjoy it because we're we've kind of been taught, and it's been soaked in through culture, that you accumulate and you accumulate and you accumulate for status. And so, yeah, that kind of not enough, never having enough, not being able to work out my short-term needs are because I've got my eye too far on over here in the future.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And we're told, aren't we, to just focus on today, just get through today. Well, we wouldn't have any pensions if we only focused on today.
Yeah, and how many
If you
people
have a pension.
yeah, how many people do you know who can't even look at their bank accounts? I mean, I
I
hear that story
It's too
constantly.
frightening. Yeah, they're in
Frightening. I don't
avoidance.
want to know.
I'm the opposite. I like to check. I like to check. I'm a checker. I was homeless, so I keep. I can tell you quite accurately what goes in, what goes. I'm a yeah. Well, you know, I says, oh, I need a lot of accuracy, don't I? And you were like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
I'm the same with money. My first job was working in a bank that gave me an ethic or my relationship to a degree about money,
Yeah,
and how I felt about money. That really started my story, I guess, with money in earnest. I know what's in my account, but and the same way I talked about, I'm not going to pay a bank to look after
yeah,
my money. I'm not going to pay a credit card money company. I'm not. I'll use their money and then I'll pay it off the
yeah,
end of the month. Now, it's not been too clever because interest rates have been so low. But if interest rates go up higher, then it means that I can get interest on my money, but I use their money each month, the credit
yeah.
card company each month. But what people are doing is they're just living on credit and they're just paying off the minimum and they're building up this huge debt.
That's an impulse control problem. That's an impulse. I need it. There's a lovely song by Black Eyed Peas called Generation Now, Want It Now. And it sums up
Yes.
the world, that it's an impulse control problem. I just, you've actually, you've hit on what I was thinking about, the sense of deserving, the sense
Oh,
of am I worth spending this money
entitlement.
on? Well, I was thinking the opposite. I've gone for both lens. If you don't value yourself, if you don't have a sense of deserving that I can have nice things, then you
Yeah,
don't invest in yourself. So we can
yeah,
work from a place of sabotaging. It's a waste of money to get my hair or nails done. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a waste of money. And actually, as parents and partners, we often put children's needs before our own, and that
yeah.
happens. But you're right. I think the self entitlement comes from, if when we do our parenting series, Wendy, we will talk about a skill that has not been learned in our childhoods, and that is you can't have everything you want. And let you it's impossible. You can't have everything you want, so you have to be able to manage the disappointment of being able to live within your means. And I'm an expert at it because didn't have anything, and I didn't know how to claim benefits. I couldn't claim benefits. Lived to hand to mouth, cut my cloth to suit, as I say,
Mm,
guys, to suit my lifestyle.
yeah,
So pulling in and retracting as I have money or don't have
yeah,
money. But I
exactly.
think going back to our lessons around money in childhood, if you've never been set limits, I remember working with a kid who had a bout, yeah, that was more than I earned in a week. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, a very a kind of privileged in one area because there was a lot of money around, but neglected emotionally in another area. And so he is going to fall flat on his face at some point, unless dad's going to bankroll him forever. this kid's gonna have a real shock when he knows how much kind of minimum wage is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Unless
exactly.
he can fast forward somehow to, not going through uni and becoming a lawyer that earns a lot of money. Sorry, lawyers, but your
Mm,
fees are good. As yeah. And so actually, we our scarcity, that ability to kind of wait, to be disappointed.
yeah.
You're right. There can be a lot of self entitlements around that. Why should I wait? I don't want to wait. I don't
Instant gratification.
instant gratification. I'll just put it on credit. I'll pay later, and so I end up I'm in chaos patterns rather than rigid patterns, and so I end up accumulating debt. Yeah, they're not so much relationship problems as relationships with ourselves. They're through what we've grown up through in childhood, but they massively impact the relationship if what you're doing doesn't fit in with your partner's kind of patterns of kind of value system, their how they spend, how they see money, or the
Yeah.
lack of it. Yeah, yeah.
I want to throw in
Go for
keeping
it.
up with the Joneses.
Oh, yeah. What other people think? Yeah, we talked about it in the Asian culture around status, but yeah, what other people think. Yeah.
I've got to keep up, and we're thrown that all over. TV adverts, social media. You've got to have a new kitchen. You've got to have folding doors in your
It's
patio.
perfection. It's rooted in
Everything.
perfectionism, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I need a new kitchen. I looked at somebody's kitchen, a friend of mine, and I'm like, I didn't see anything wrong with your kitchen because my value system is I'd rather, that kitchen looks good to me. That's a holiday. Or yeah, that's a holiday. That's a night and really nice
Exactly.
experience somewhere. And actually, no, it's got a few chips on. I want to change it. So yeah, the perfectionism is, the perfection in homes that could,
Yeah. But
what
then that means perfectionist equals in their minds, perfectionist in their relationships.
I think perfectionism kind of tends to run through, doesn't it? Almost,
Yeah.
it runs through in our homes. It can run through in, I was editing something earlier and I was like, oh, I spotted a spelling mistake, and I thought I didn't think I was a perfectionist, but actually my anxiety, I'm like keep changing
Mm,
stuff. Um, but we're fed into this kind of like, all these designer homes magazines, and so yeah, of course, somebody's like, I want a new kitchen, and somebody else is like, well, I've got to work another I met the plumber who came to fix one of kind of my shower not draining properly. Said he worked 7 days a week um, to fill a need for staff, and so yeah, that I just want to talk about that when you can't provide for your family as well. I've seen this in um, um, sometimes it's rooted in money, but we don't talk about work addictions that hit relationships. And so actually, I'm working really hard to provide for this family, but is there an insatiable need for stuff that is either burning someone out? I think the opposite also arrives in value systems, like somebody kind of like saying, well, that person's lazy because I have a stronger work drive, maybe I earn more money, and so I don't see you as pulling your weight in the kind of work
yeah,
department. Yeah,
yeah.
their power balances again.
Yeah, and the shame of not earning as much as your partner, especially if a man doesn't earn as much as his wife.
Or
I
not
think that
earning enough because there's
exactly,
something going
not,
on.
yes. And I think that all of that, whereas really, yeah, money is a token. When I'm talking about the pig and the cow, but it's a token to provide needs or wants. But it's taken on a whole new kind of it's monstrous kind of picture, hasn't it, in some situations? Because it's just feeding that power and control and all those other things, which I think,
It is, and we might be talking about money. I think you have to, I'm just flipping it over because I always flip stuff over. You know me. I'm like, what's
yeah,
it look like from over here? Over here, over here, over here, over here, over here, over here, over
I'm
here.
always
And
expecting
under
it.
there. But I'm also thinking about, we also get judged for wanting more. And so when I'm talking about, having enough, I also want to talk about, valuing ourselves. Like we spoke about earlier, actually charging fees, yeah, for
Yes.
services. It's okay, that people, our relationship with ourselves often means that we don't charge enough for
Yeah.
something, or
Yeah.
we can't want more. If you want a better life, you're judged whatever you do. You're judged if you're poor, and you're judged if you work hard, and then you're
Yeah.
judged if you kind of want, you kind of say, actually, I want to afford the nice things in life. So you're judged for being greedy now.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah,
there's so many different lenses, as you always call
yeah,
it. There's so many different lenses that
yeah,
money is viewed through, and we as people, as humans, are judged on or perceived as, or people put them on pedestals. The richest people in the world,
yeah.
Elon
Judged
Musk.
if you don't have it, and if you have a lot of money, what happens is you get dehumanized. So as celebrities, well, they can't feel. I remember Sam Smith kind of revealing something about his mental health, and actually, because he's in a public eye and he's a celebrity, there's the empathy disappears because you have money removes empathy. Yeah, it dehumanizes people
Yeah.
too. So it's like the royal family. You have money. What have you got to moan about? Yeah,
Oh
you fly
gosh.
in private jets. So when somebody has money, there's this assumption that you don't struggle. I've had
Yeah.
people say to me, "What would you know?" They see me, I've got my hair and nails done,
Yeah.
and they see me as kind of like, yeah, you look a bit posh, and what would you know about something? And so there's this kind of assumptions and jumping conclusions to make, and I have to say to them, actually, I used to be homeless, and they go, oh, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
um,
it is
the
absolutely.
lens of having money and how that removes empathy. Another lens. Yeah,
Yeah. But it equally ties in, well, it ties in with the relationship with ourselves and the relationship with others,
yeah,
whether it is our partner or whether it is, I don't know, someone you see in the street, even. People will make a judgment, or we will have that perception of what that money has, how it affects us.
yeah.
So
There
yeah.
was I think it was the guy from IKEA who owns IKEA, and he turned up to something on the bus. I'm pretty sure, I don't know how accurate this story is. I'm pretty sure it's accurate, but it's hearsay, so forgive me. But I'm sure it was IKEA, the guy who owned IKEA. He turned up on the bus with a rolled up newspaper under his arm, looking like a homeless person, and he must didn't let him in. And he's a he's a multi-millionaire, and so the judgments we have around, how people look, yeah, massive. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
I think we
How are we
could.
doing for time? I'm when I'm in this thinking and conversation and connection mode, and it's kind of like crack cocaine for me. It really is, for my little brain. And it lights up every part of my brain and the connection that we have. I could, I can be a bit supercharged. So I'm wondering what the time is, because I could be like here 4 hours, and you're like, oh, I'm exhausted now.
Well, I think we were planned to make them about an hour, and I think we've made it to that hour because I
Halfway.
think
Is it time
also,
to wrap up for today?
I think so, because I think we've got to think about our listeners as well. How long will they tolerate us?
I think if I'm hoping, you know what, we live in a 2 second snippet generation. I
Yeah,
am hoping that people, this is recorded, so I'm hoping that people are fascinated enough to listen. They might be listening on a walk while they're driving, or they may have settled down to just be like, I'm done with multitasking and I'm just going to focus on this. They can stop it, start it. They can have us in small doses or big doses. That's the beauty of pre-record, isn't it?
isn't it just? Yeah. I,
Yeah,
I mean, I do it all the time myself.
it
So
can
yeah.
fit whatever kind of, whatever your attention span is. And if you're bored after 10 minutes and have switched off, then they won't have seen this bit.
Right.
So yeah, shall we wrap up there for today? I'm
Yeah, I
glad
think
we did
so.
money, are you? Because we had planned something, but I think the liveness works better when we're like, yeah, it's live, it's in the moment.
Yeah, I think that really, yeah, I brought something to you earlier and said, gosh, this has
You can
happened,
bring
and then
anything to me, and I'm like, let's pop it open.
I'll have to think of something else to pop you
Yeah,
open.
just I'm like, yeah, it's one of my super talents. It's like you can bring anything, and my encyclopedic brain will pop it open and go with it.
All right, so shall we say goodbye for now and thank the listeners for
Yeah, goodbye and thanks
listening?
for listening, and bye, Wendy.
Bye then.